All right, well, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Scott Carter. I'm a licensed therapist here in the beautiful state of Utah. I do actively work full-time as a licensed therapist, and most recently too, started working as a clinical director with a new clinic that we're super excited about. Try to raise the bar in mental health. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching these videos. Hope everybody's doing good out there. Just a quick note, if you find these videos helpful, if you think this content is good, if you think that it's valuable and helpful, you can help me out a lot and send me some love. All the links are in the description below for how you can basically say, hey, we want more of this. Any financial help that you can provide is going to help and enable me to produce a lot more content like this. And truth be told, my friends, the area in which I live, the cost of living continues to go up and my pay continues to gradually increase. Anyways, what are we talking about today? We're talking about the difference between borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. I get this question a lot because a lot of people do notice accurately that there seems to be an overlap when it comes to behaviors of borderline versus narcissism. And what is going on with that? And how do we know if it's borderline or how do we know if it's narcissism? So I'm going to throw out a theory of mine out there. Now, I'm going to provide a very, very heavy disclaimer. This is simply a theory that I have formed based on my observations and my experience. I've interacted a lot with borderline and narcissism, mainly because I often encounter their kids. I do a lot of work with teenagers, and quite frankly, these are the kids that end up in therapy a lot. They just do. Their parents, when you have a borderline or narcissistic parent, chances are you're gonna end up in therapy sooner or later. That's just the truth. And a lot of these kids, I've done work in schools, done a lot of work in the community, and I get reports of kids who were just completely crippled with anxiety, cannot function socially, can't make friends, etc., etc., etc. I mean, you show me a 14-year-old who stays in the bathroom all day, I'm going to show you a problematic parent. And so in that regard, I feel like I have encountered a lot of these situations a lot. And people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. And it's possible that what I observe is localized. It's possible that my local area just kind of sees this. But I really do believe that borderline and narcissism is far more common than we think it is. And I've had people get upset and no, it's rare and what's wrong with you? And it's like, why is this such a big deal to maybe stop and ask ourselves honestly if personality disorders like borderline and narcissism are more common than we originally thought that they were? Why is that such a foul? Why is that so out of bounds? I don't understand what the big deal is. How are we going to ever properly address any problems if we're afraid of taking an honest look at them? But let's talk about the differences between narcissism and borderline. Again, this is my theory. It's just a theory. I don't have any research, formal research to back it up. Just my simply years and years of experience. I actually believe that it's possible that narcissism and borderline are two variations of the same disorder. And we see this in other disorders, right? In mental illness in the DSM, where there's like two different bipolars, for example. There's bipolar 1, there's bipolar 2. There's been different subtypes of schizophrenia. There has been a autism spectrum. You could take two kids that are diagnosed with autism, and one of them may function way, way, way better than the other one, but they're both diagnosed with autism, right? This is just kind of an example. In my opinion, I think it's possible. I theorize, and in case you didn't notice, I'm overemphasizing it on these words. It's opinion, it's theory, but again, it's not just I'm pulling it out of my butt. I do believe that borderline and narcissism are two variations of the same disorder. Now, typically, we see borderline personality disorder is overwhelmingly female, and narcissistic personality disorder is overwhelmingly male. So if you say she and borderline together, it's generally more accurate than he has borderline, and males often far more often have narcissistic personality disorder. But they look very, very similar because why? Because they act similar, because everything is what? About them. And I kind of talked about this in my last video. I have a really big problem with borderline and narcissistic parents, primarily because when the child is in distress, has been harmed, has some needs to be met, who is it that we end up hearing all about? The narcissistic or borderline parent. And the kid is completely off the radar because the narcissistic or borderline parent is about them. You know, if you've ever lived with someone who is narcissistic or borderline, you go, oh, we're low on milk. And what do? Oh, so you're saying I'm a bad mother, right? No, I just said we're low on milk. And they make these interpretations and make everything about them, everything. And I've even had clients who are adults that were raised by a narcissist or borderline, and they will say, my parent never, ever did or made decisions for my benefit. It was always for them. We see that with narcissism. We see that with borderline. So the question is, I asked myself years ago, why do we see, if there are variations of a similar disorder, why do we see BPD happen more so often with women and narcissism so often happen with men? And I believe that it boils down to emotional vulnerability. I read a brilliant article a few years ago that said that narcissism appeared to be like a frantic effort to avoid vulnerability, whereas borderline is a frantic effort to avoid abandonment, okay? And the difference being, right, that narcissists refuse to be vulnerable no matter what. And what happens, I believe, in life is that a lot of males, if they show vulnerability, they're put down, they're shamed. It's unacceptable. Far more acceptable for women to show emotional vulnerability than it is for males. And so females, if they're developing borderline, they can even get some validation when it comes to showing some emotional vulnerability. And so therefore, that behavior is reinforced. But with males who are narcissistic, if they show emotional vulnerability, they may have gotten punished, even severely. And I've seen situations too where just in families where the daughter is treated like a little princess and the boy is treated with total contempt and disdain, like he's some kind of scourge. And so that is more likely to, in my opinion, develop narcissism because the boy therefore becomes morbidly afraid of showing any type of vulnerability because it was always negatively reinforced with serious pain, negative reinforcement. And so I really hope and believe that down the road we might see a version of the DSM where sorry, hopefully we'll have a version of the DSM where they kind of redo it, the chapter on personality disorders, because I think it's in severe need of a major overhaul. So that's my theory on the overlap of borderline and narcissism. I just, bottom line, too long didn't read. I just believe that the reason why they look so similar is because they're just two different variations of the same disorder, the same personality disorder. So thank you for watching. That's going to do it for this one. I need to get going soon. I got to get to the office and see some clients. Have a good one, everybody.